The devastating famine, also known as the Irish Potato Famine or the Great Hunger, had a catastrophic impact on the population of Ireland between 1845 and 1852. Millions of people either perished from starvation or left their homeland in search of a better life. Astonishingly, this tragedy occurred within the United Kingdom, a country known for its wealth and prosperity at the time. To fully grasp the consequences of the famine, we must first understand the lives of ordinary Irish farmers. The 1841 census revealed that more than half of Ireland's 8 million inhabitants relied on farming as their primary source of income. These farmers, who worked as tenants, did not own the land they cultivated. Instead, they paid rent to wealthy Protestant Englishmen or Anglo-Irish families who lived in Britain. The origins of how these families acquired the land are a story for another day. Combined, these landowners controlled 80% of the island's prime agricultural land, leaving the tenant farmers with mere acres to work on. These farmers struggled to grow enough crops to cover the rent and feed their families. Many resorted to taking on seasonal labor roles to supplement their income, but the small farms often operated at a loss. Any profits made from the land were typically sent out of Ireland and rarely reinvested in the country. Consequently, a class of people emerged who barely subsisted, living in abject poverty. However, there was one crop that made their survival possible, an easily grown and nutritious staple, the potato. The Irish lumper, a specific variety of potato, allowed families not only to survive but also to thrive. Since the introduction of potatoes to Ireland, the population had doubled in just over 100 years. Potatoes could be grown almost anywhere in the country, even in small plots of land. As a result, 1/3 of the arable land was devoted to potato cultivation. It was estimated that the average Irish person consumed as much as 14 pounds of potatoes per day. Unfortunately, the heavy reliance on potatoes, particularly the lumper variety, would become a significant factor in the devastating famine. A destructive strain of the plant disease Phytophthora infestans, originating in Mexico, spread to North America and eventually found its way to Europe, wreaking havoc wherever it struck. The blight turned entire potato crops into putrid sludge, rendering them inedible. It easily spread among the uniform crops of Irish lumpers. By November 1843, it became evident that the potato crops were failing. In response, Robert Peel, the Prime Minister of Britain at the time, purchased a large quantity of corn and set up various food stores around Ireland. A scientific commission was established to investigate the cause of the blight and potential remedies. Peel also repealed the Corn Laws, which were protective tariffs on imported grain, in an attempt to encourage the retention of crops for domestic consumption. However, these measures faced opposition from landowners who benefited from high crop prices and protectionist policies. As the famine worsened, Peel's government was defeated in 1846, and John Russell became the new Prime Minister. Russell's government adhered to the economic doctrine of laissez-faire, which advocated for minimal government intervention in the market. In 1847, Charles Trevelyan, the civil servant in charge of relief efforts in Ireland, implemented policies aligned with laissez-faire ideals. Workhouses and soup kitchens were established, funded by Irish farmers through taxation, but they were deliberately maintained at low standards to discourage their use. Trevelyan, along with others who shared his beliefs, considered the blight to be a divine intervention, a means to rectify what they perceived as the Irish way of life. Many people in Britain viewed the Irish as overly dependent on potatoes, having excessively large families, and belonging to the wrong Christian denomination, predominantly Catholic. In a letter to a colleague, Trevelyan expressed his belief that the blight was a judgment from God, intended to teach the Irish a lesson. While the people of Ireland starved, food exports to Britain continued, as the middlemen arranged for the sale of tons of grain and cattle overseas. The desire for profit and the principles of the free market made anywhere but Ireland a more attractive place to sell these crops. The impoverished Irish population could not afford the food, and the British government was reluctant to bear the expenses. Instead, the government initiated a series of public works programs, where starving individuals could work in exchange for wages. These projects often involved the construction of roads leading to nowhere, and the workers, plagued by hunger, could barely afford to purchase maize with their meager earnings. Women and children even joined these labor efforts in an attempt to earn enough for survival. To qualify for government aid, individuals had to relinquish any land ownership or lease, resulting in many farmers giving up their homes to enter overcrowded workhouses or join the long lines at soup kitchens. As the failed crops mounted year after year, the world turned its attention to Ireland, trying to comprehend the unfolding disaster. One eyewitness account came from James Mahoney, an artist commissioned by the Illustrated London News, who was sent to Ireland to report on the famine's impact. He vividly described encountering a desperate crowd in the town, including a woman pleading for aid while clutching the corpse of her child, hoping to secure funds for a proper burial. Mahoney's inquiry revealed that numerous similar cases occurred daily, a heart-wrenching testament to the desperation born out of famine. Father Peter Ward, a parish priest in County Mayo, also documented distressing incidents he witnessed during this time. He recounted multiple occasions where families were found dead in their homes, with evidence of cannibalism, an unfathomable level of desperation. The flesh of deceased family members was consumed by the living, as they struggled to survive in the midst of unparalleled suffering. The dire circumstances forced many to leave Ireland and seek a fresh start in other countries. Between 1845 and 1855, an estimated 2.1 million people emigrated from Ireland, often embarking on treacherous journeys aboard coffin ships. Some landowners even chose to pay for their tenants' passage, as it proved more economical than dealing with them. Stephen de Vere, an Anglo-Irish landowner, accompanied his former tenants to Canada to assist them in resettlement. In his diary, he documented the harrowing conditions aboard these ships, passengers cramped together in darkness, deprived of fresh air, immersed in filth, and breathing in a noxious atmosphere. The sick lay among the healthy in sleeping quarters so confined that they could hardly move. Those who perished during the journey were callously tossed into the ocean, denied proper burials. Due to the poor conditions and the health of those on board, mortality rates on coffin ships often reached as high as 30%. Those who arrived in North America, Canada, and Australia faced discrimination and prejudice, but they had the opportunity to escape the blight and start anew. Irish immigrants made significant contributions to their new homes, despite the initial challenges they encountered. The Great Hunger caused by the Irish Potato Famine irrevocably transformed Ireland and the world. The mass exodus of people from Ireland resulted in Irish communities flourishing across the globe, leaving a lasting impact to this day. While famines in the Western world have become increasingly rare, there are still countries where the threat of famine looms ominously. We can learn from the Irish famine and the broader potato blights that affected Europe to shape our responses to such tragedies. The plight of the Irish was compounded by the pursuit of profits and the application of a political ideology that viewed the Irish as an inferior race. As a result, approximately 1 million people perished, highlighting the devastating consequences of such beliefs.